Hello, welcome to the Record Celtic podcast. My name is Daniel Coe. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports' Graeme Young. Graeme, how's it going?
Oh, very well, Daniel. Nice to see you back from America. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. I'm very good. We're also joined all the way from Dublin by the one and only Ryan McDonald. Ryan, looks lovely.
Yeah, it's a cracking day. It's a lot nicer than it was when I left Glasgow this morning. So it's absolutely Scots. I think it's going to hit 26 today. So thought I would set up beside outside Temple Bar before I try the local delicacy over here, which is a pint of Guinness.
You're obviously there. Obviously, Celtic are playing Shelbourne tomorrow night in the first pre-season friendly. I was just saying to Graeme, it feels absolutely bizarre that we're even talking about club football again, and the World Cup's not even reached the quarterfinals yet.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at it today. I think it's only 7 weeks since Celtic beat Hearts in that final day. It's absolutely flown in. And like you say, the World Cup's been dominating the headlines, but Celtic are back in action tomorrow night against Shelbourne, and that's the first of 4 pre-season friendlies so far. And I suppose fans that aren't really interested in international football will be excited for the club, for the domestic duties to return. So yeah, Celtic are up and running tomorrow. We should be looking forward to it.
I am actually quite excited to get domestic football back, Graeme. I know that sounds a bit kind of what's the word? I've enjoyed the World Cup, is what I'm trying to say. It's been great, but you can't whack domestic football, can you? The drama of it.
No, definitely not. This is a bit unique, this World Cup as well, the way it kind of runs. But I think for Celtic fans as well, it's just it was such a crescendo at the end of last season. It was so exciting the way it finished. I think the club were kind of indebted to them to kind of make the start of the transfer window of a similar nature, start with a bang. So the fact that it's kind of dragged along, but these things can change quickly. But I think it's a good opportunity this as well. Ryan knows as well that kind of the younger players will be part of the squad to kind of make an impact. But as you say, as much as you wait for club football, it comes back in a hurry, and then when it comes back, it doesn't stop, does it? It's got to be full pelt for another 11 months or 10 and a half months. So you better get used to it as well. And we added interest of these friendlies with World Cup fixtures in the background as well. I'm sure there might be a few phones in the press box, Ryan, as well, and seeing what's going on elsewhere. So it's all go. Very exciting.
We obviously mentioned the game tomorrow night, and as you rightly say, Graeme, I'm sure there'll be a lot of the youngsters involved in the game tomorrow night. But it's a really strong Celtic squad. I was looking at some of the training pictures, Ryan. I mean, looks like all the big names are back. Carter Vickers, I mean, to get him back, what a boost that will be for Celtic.
Yeah, I hate to say this as a cliche, but he will be like a new signing. In fact, he will be like a new signing for Martin O'Neill, because he never kicked a ball under Martin O'Neill last season. So, yeah, he's just a man mountain. He's been colossal across his 5 seasons now at Celtic, and you can see you saw last season how leaky the defence was without him. So, I think he's absolutely crucial, and to get him fit and rearing to go will be absolutely massive for Martin O'Neill, and I expect him to play some part tomorrow night. And I'm looking forward to seeing him back in action as well. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Mike Narocki as well. He was on loan in the Bundesliga 2 last season with Hanover, and by all accounts he seemed to do pretty well, albeit he was quite slow getting off the mark, but he became a kind of regular fixture there, and they were unlucky not to get promoted. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on. I've always felt as a player there, he clearly didn't fit in Brendan Rodgers' plans for whatever reason. There was maybe concerns over his fitness and his injury history, but this is a clean slate, I think, not only for Narocki but for everybody at Celtic, and I think this is the opportunity to grasp it. It's either now or never. If he doesn't make it this summer, then I'm pretty sure he'll be punted, probably in a permanent transfer, because there is interest in him in Germany. But yeah, I wonder if there's going to be a revival of Mike Narocki's Celtic career. We'll find out. But again, I'm looking forward to seeing him tomorrow night as well.
What do you make, Graeme, of Carter Vickers' return as well? I mean, I don't know why, right? I think it's because he's not that tall. But there's something about Carter Vickers under Martin O'Neill. I don't know if I see it, if you know what I mean. Martin O'Neill likes a big team of giants, a big team that can impose themselves physically. I know Carter Vickers can do that, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. Do you think Martin O'Neill will take him?
I never actually thought about it until you said, but I think when the nickname's he's called the Fridge, I think he's got plenty of physicality to do what Martin O'Neill needs. But I actually think it's a good pairing. Actually, see if you go through managers and players that would probably work well together. And I get your argument, but I think O'Neill will be absolutely over the moon to have him because Austin Trusty, even though he's not playing many minutes, his time away in the World Cup seems like it's not slowing down. And then with Donald Trump doing USA favours, it doesn't look like it's got to be home anytime soon, or Trusty's got to be home anytime soon. But what Carter Vickers lacks in height, he makes up in physicality, and that's what O'Neill's teams were all about. Like you go through all of these guys like Raman Vega, Stan Varga, who weren't the class of Johan Mjalby, but they brought a physicality, and these guys were maybe tall in stature, but Carter Vickers just brings that imposing element that kind of is the hallmark of Martin O'Neill team, and he looks right up for it. I felt really bad for him actually, that injury last year, because he's always had these niggly injuries, but he's never had a kind of maybe career-defining injury. And I think that's kind of will be a big ask, but O'Neill was very effusive in his praise of him last season. I think he kind of intimated that there was a half chance that he could have maybe thrown him in for one of these fixtures at the end of last season. I think he said a bit with his tongue lodged in his cheek, but now he's back. I think it's important. He's just a vital player. I think Celtic, people maybe make this argument, why have Celtic won so much and why are they so dominant, and even when maybe not every transfer's right, but when you've got players like Johnson, McGregor, Carter Vickers, guys like O'Reilly, Kyogo, Maeda, like you're 7, 8, 9, 10 guys that have been staples of this team over the last 5 years, and he's one of the best of them. So I think he'll be right up for it. Another thing as well, have all these players been that will get sold or maybe no one mentions Carter Vickers, there's probably a good chance he might be the one who has kind of missed that opportunity, and he becomes a Celtic lifer as well, that maybe at one point he might have been in the mix to go. I don't know if his injury history would suit everyone for the fee that it would probably cost. So and I think he seems delighted to stay at Celtic, so I think it's going to be a big season for him. If he stays fit, I don't see why he wouldn't be integral to O'Neill's team next season.
For what it's worth, I wasn't trying to get him out the team there.
No, I know.
I still think he's the best defender in Scotland, as far as I can see anyway, at the moment. So it'll be interesting just to see how he works under O'Neill. You mentioned some of the players that might be going out, Graeme. We'll maybe come to them in a minute. But some transfer news potentially of incomings for Celtic. Camilo Duran, the Colombian striker, he's been linked with Celtic. He's been on Record Sport Online the last few days. What do you make of that one, Ryan? I think 5 goals in the Champions League last season. He's certainly, on paper, sounds like a very good player.
Absolutely. And I've been reading some of the reaction online, and to be honest, what I've read has been quite a mixed response from Celtic fans, despite the fact, like you say, he has got a really decent pedigree. He scored 5 goals in the Champions League last season. But because of his price tag, fans are like, well, you get £60 million in the bank, why aren't you spending it? It doesn't really matter. I mean, you spent £5 million in Balakuisha last season, and he played a handful of times and basically didn't contribute anything. So if you can sign this guy for £3 million, I think that would be a real coup. Obviously, like everybody else, we've looked at the highlights reel on YouTube, and really looks the part. Listen, Celtic really need a focal point up front. Dyson Maeda, as we all know, I think it's inevitable he's going to leave the club over the coming weeks. He had a pretty impressive World Cup with Japan as well, and I'm pretty sure he'll be on the radar of even more clubs. So Celtic need a proven goal scorer, and Duran, I think, is obviously the one that fits the bill. Kind of sources in Colombia saying that he has already agreed terms with Celtic. It's just a case of the club's thrashing out a deal which is believed to be in the region of £3 million. So, you'd expect Martin O'Neill hope to get that one tied up pretty quickly. And, I think he'll be one of at least a couple of centre forwards that will come into the club. It remains to be seen whether Kelechi and Atch are going to come back. I think perhaps an niggling point with that would be his salary. He's not going to come for cheap. He obviously contributed hugely towards the end of the season, and the business end of the season. Yes, he had his injury problems, but I think if you ask most Celtic fans, they would love to have him back. But he has interest in Turkey, so interesting to see how that pans out. But Celtic need a minimum of two strikers in there and 2 centre forwards with kind of prolific pedigree, and I think Girano is obviously one that fits the mould there, and he kind of fits the profile as well. I think he's only 24, and like you say, he gets Champions League experience, so he ticks a lot of boxes, and I think that could be an exciting signing for Celtic to get it over the line.
Graeme, it wasn't like minnows that he scored against the Champions League last season. I think it was Newcastle. I think another one was Celtic, I think. I mean, he certainly looks, as I say, on paper, like he could be a really good signing.
Definitely, and I think it's funny as well. There's a lot of, I think, excitement. People that maybe watch the highlights of the scouting reports as well, and it's probably because it's a lack of. There's probably not been an exciting striker signing, obviously, in this waiting since Kyogo's been a long time as well since I'm looking for that. But he is really, really good. I've been impressed, and I think the fee. I think you're buying out a league that doesn't sell players for big money. So as much as you can knock Celtic for, you can knock them for plenty of things in the transfer window in recent times, incomings and outgoings. I don't think this is one of them. The one thing I'd add as well, he can play centrally, but you can see him as well just on the wings. He normally plays off the right, like kind of the modern way now, that left-footed player cutting inside. But quite a lot of his highlights, I don't know if it was by design or chance, but ended up on the left side as well. What you quite like is when he ends up out there, what does a good left footer do? He just takes one touch and crosses it in the box as well. He doesn't get too fancy with it. But one of these players that probably undervalued, had to go from Colombia to Portugal, make his name, taking a bit of a gamble. But Karabakh, to be fair, have been they've been pretty good recruiters, as you would need to be kind of knocking on the door in the Champions League over the last 10 years, making the group stage, actually getting out as well. They made the knockouts. Like it's a proper achievement. And he looks an exciting player. He looks the type of player who, you know, how I think the South American element of it here, or well, North American in this case, but you know what, Araujo last season, you know, just someone with a bit of devilment that's got the ability to kind of rise to playing for Celtic. I think you'll see a lot of badge kissing and maybe jumping into the stands, just that type of X factor element. But he looks like a proper player. I don't think he is a 25, 30 goal player. I think his values a kind of a player who can play in multiple positions. You could imagine actually he'd be the type of player, you know, when maybe Celtic mix it up in the Champions League, he'd maybe play wide domestically and go through the middle in Europe if that was an option.
Almost like a Samaras role.
Exactly. He's got that kind of versatility. He's definitely, and I think good Celtic strikers do. Maeda's had that, hasn't he? He's played all over the place. So, and so that I think there's a real excitement there. But if it's a deal that gets done, is exactly the type of player that Celtic need, and he's not the only one, but he would be a good start.
There's a couple of other names that I'm going to throw at you guys. Alfie Devine is one. He was on loan at Preston North End last season from Tottenham. Apparently did really well. Apparently there's interest from throughout the Championship at Celtic. Graeme, I've been linked with him repeatedly over the last week or so. Obviously, personally, I haven't seen much of him, but again, on paper, he certainly sounds like a very good player. Yeah,
and if you watch his highlights as well, you'll see a bit of the Matarellis about him as well. He's quite languid. He's good on the ball. He's got a good engine on him. He's a proper versatile midfielder. Came with a really good rep with Tottenham. A lot of these players just need to move. Preston's transfer record's just over 2 million. They're more than willing to pay the 6 million, which kind of shows you their estimations. They had an exclusive window up until July the 1st to sign him. The noises down there is that they're not out the fight, but they're keenly aware that other teams are in the mix. I think there's other Championship sides that like him. And then Celtic, obviously. Well, Martin O'Neill attended a Preston QPR game in April, and he admitted that he was down doing due diligence, and he said for the next manager, who turned out to be himself, and he put some names on the board, players of talent, and it was Alfie Devine he was there to have a look at, and I think everyone now knows that. But he looks a proper player, young midfielder, exactly what Cal McGregor needs as well. I always felt Cal McGregor was brought back to giving new energy with guys around him, like when Hatate was in his pomp and Matarelli, and when Engels was playing well, because McGregor's probably the biggest fan of Engels at Celtic. He always talks him up, he's always bigged him up, and he's the type of guy he would love in the midfield with him. But he looks a real talent, and I can see why that would make sense. But he's the type of guy that's got to be on the plane to the Algarve as well. He's got to be, if you're looking for Champions League qualifiers, you've got to have Duran. If it is whoever the players you've identified, if you get them in, you've got to get them in quick as well. That's where Celtic are at. But it looks like Devine looks a proper player. I've got to be honest. I think he's been an exciting one as well.
The other one, Ryan, that I need to throw at both of you, and it's not a new name, but it's one that I'd love to see Celtic get done. Elijah Just. I mean, he's been outstanding at the World Cup. what did he finish with? Was it 3 or 4 goals?
3 goals.
3
3 goals
goals
in 3 games.
I mean, do you think he's perhaps priced himself out of a move to Celtic, or surely Celtic can still get a deal done if they want it done? But I guess if they did want it done, maybe it would have been done by now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Elijah Just, without a shadow of a doubt, is my favourite player in the Premiership last season. I actually voted him as my Scottish Football Writers Association Player of the Year. He was that good. He was majestic to watch. I think he had 15 goal contributions. I think it was 8 goals and 7 assists for Motherwell last season, which, by the way, was his debut year in Scottish football. He took it by storm. He really lit up the Scottish top flight, and quite rightly, he's on the radar of many clubs. My understanding is that there hasn't been any official bids for him yet, but Motherwell obviously will be braced for offers over the coming weeks. I don't really know if Celtic want him. We know that Celtic have scouted him last season. Celtic want him. I don't really know what they're waiting on. Is it perhaps they're waiting to see if Arnie Ingles goes out the door, if Benjamin Eagleton goes out the door? I know Rio Hatate wants to leave. Paulo Bernardo's been a fringe man. You probably expect him to leave as well. So is it maybe a case of waiting to shift them on before firming up with their interest? I'm not sure, but I think that's an absolute no-brainer for Celtic. And like you say, Dan, 3 goals in 3 games for New Zealand in the World Cup. It's like he made history as well, and becoming the first New Zealander to score a brace in the World Cup as well in a single game. So he's just an exceptional talent, and I was actually delighted to see that he performed so well in the World Cup, because people would have said, he's all right doing that in the Scottish Premiership, but he's able to make the step up, and he did. He was absolutely outstanding, and hopefully as well, we all want to see Scottish clubs maximise the value of players, and hopefully that'll add on a couple of pounds anyway to his price tag at Motherwell, because you'd expect him to go for a record fee. I think Lennon Miller was a record sale around £4.7 million plus add-ons. So Elijah Just is worth that and even more. Have Celtic missed the boat? I'm not sure. But I think he would absolutely be open to a move to Celtic without a shadow of a doubt. Just depends what other options on the table. I wouldn't be surprised if Big Jens comes in for him at Toulouse as well. He's obviously worked with him before Motherwell, so he's the one that unearthed him. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think it's an absolute no-brainer. I was interviewing Scott McDonald the other day, and obviously Scott McDonald played for both Motherwell and Celtic, and he's covering the Cup Down Under, World Cup Down Under as well, and he's watched New Zealand closely. And he compared him to a Stan Petrov, a dynamic player that makes runs into the box, and obviously he's prolific as well. I just think he's an exceptional talent, and I think Celtic should absolutely push the button on that one. I just wonder if they're waiting to offload a couple of players beforehand, because, as I said, the midfield's looking a wee bit congested at the minute. But they've got to be proactive rather than reactive, because if they leave it too late, there's every opportunity other clubs to come to the table, and that's what Celtic want.
I think Ryan makes a good point, Graeme, doesn't he? That, look, you need to get these players in. I know that we assume players like Engels and Maeda and other players are going to be moved on, but you need to get the players in now. Elijah just seems like an absolute no-brainer to me, even at £4 or £5 million.
100%. He just looks so good. Last season, how the Motherwell team, I think there's always a buyer's beware. When a team comes out of nowhere and there's multiple players that do really well. Probably the most famous example was Monaco's team, Champions League, about 10 years ago. You get guys like Mbappe, Bernardo Silva, who are just superstars, but also guys like Sidibe in there as well that get big moves.
Bakayoko, remember him?
Exactly, Bakayoko and Sidibe, they're the players that kind of aren't at the same level of the superstars, but if a whole team comes alive, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Motherwell, but when a manager like Askew comes in and does so well, there's obviously going to be a couple there that are just not they're better in that setup than they are out with it. But I think Elijah just he's not that player. He's just a really top operator. His numbers, analytics wise, are off the charts. There was actually a wee joke. I think it was there was a joke during the World Cup that Elijah just the type of guy that gets signed by a Serie A side in the 90s just for scoring a couple of World Cup goals, right? Irrespective of analytics and all that. But the funny thing is, his analytics they were good when Motherwell signed him. They were even better last year. There is no reason that he's proven in the league. It's like sometimes the most obvious thing in the world. I know he looks like a baby, but he's 26, so he's even got a couple of years older than. But he's another. If he had a great season, or he could make another move. I don't think Celtic would want that. They would want him for their own team, but there's no reason, there's no downside to signing Elijah Just. He's a proper player. anyone that's been to games week on week loves him. You watch him on the TV, he looks the part. There is what else you can sit and bang the table. It's all there. He's really talented, and I think he'd make Celtic a better team with him in it. So I don't think there's any argument for it, and we'll wait and see what happens. But you would assume he would be high up in the radar. But again, it's got to be. You may as well turn the sand timer on the table now. Time's running out for Celtic. They've got to get a move on because these players' bids will come in for players, and I don't know what the strategy will be this year. Will they want, sometimes players stay for the Champions League qualifiers, but I would be getting the new signings in quickly. I think.
I mean, the thing is, I think the record Scottish transfer between two clubs was Scott Brown, £1.4 million in 2007, and obviously that was Celtic that set that with him. So I think that's a bare minimum. I think that's an absolute minimum we'd be expecting for Elijah. Just as I say, I think you're talking around about the £5 million mark, and I really hope Motherwell will get that, as I say, because he's worth every penny. I think he's got a year left in his deal, but Motherwell have the option to extend it by a further 12 months, which clearly they'll do. So this is the kind of optimum value, and Celtic want him. They just need to pay the money. But I think he would be an absolute top signing for Celtic, and he's one that you talk about marquee signings. He might not maybe go down as like a big name signing, but having fans will have watched him closely last season. I think a lot of people want him in the door, so he's one that would definitely excite the supporters as well. And I just think, like you say, Dan, we summed it up perfectly. It's just a no-brainer.
Before I round up our transfer chat, Ryan, I know you've been all over the Marcelo Saracchi story. Is there any update we can give fans? Because again, he was a player that I loved last season. I thought he was a brilliant signing, and I think he'd be a brilliant signing permanently. But is there any news either of you have heard?
No, it was as you were, Dan. There was, obviously, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that Celtic decided they wanted to bring him back. Then open talks. I think Boca Juniors and Marcelo Saracchi were expecting talks to begin over a permanent move, but Celtic offered a loan deal, which just is a non-starter for Boca Juniors and for Saracchi. He's out of contract in next December, so 18 months' time, December 2027. And Boca Juniors are aware of that. They obviously want to free up a foreign slot in the team. He's been bombed out of the training sessions since he's reported back. He has no future there, but they want to recoup some money for him. And my understanding is it would take a fee of around £1.5 million to do business. And that's just a drop in the ocean for Celtic. And like you say, I mean, I thought he was a really valuable player last season. Perhaps he didn't play as much as he'd have liked. Kieran Tierney, for all the criticism over his fitness record and his injury issues, Kieran Tierney was available for just about all of last season. So you can't fault that. And I think that's a part of the reason why Marcelo didn't really play much. But, obviously he was out for a chunk of the season through injury. But look at the impact he made coming off the bench against Hearts. If he doesn't come off the bench and drive Celtic forward, Hearts are spending the summer as Scottish Premiership champions. So I think it's an absolute no-brainer. Talk about pedigree. He's played for in the Bundesliga for RB Leipzig, played in the Champions League. He's obviously spent a year at Celtic. He's proven that he's good enough there. He's an absolutely more than able deputy for Kieran Tierney. And I just think for £1.5 million, it's just it's just a no-brainer. And I think it's just a waiting game. He's got interest from elsewhere. So Celtic again, I don't think Marcelo Saracchi will be too happy with how long it's taken to complete this deal and sort out his future. From my understanding, he wanted it sorted out fairly quickly. So I don't think he'll be hanging about if another offer comes to the table. So Celtic want him again. They need to get moving.
Graeme, you won't get a better player than Saracchi in that position for £1.5 million. Surely not.
No, exactly. Honestly, you always guys like Brendan Rodgers before he left and Cal McGregor. They gave a lot of praise in Saracchi's direction. You could tell that. I think McGregor said something along the lines of he just understands to play for the team, and obviously he'd come for high-profile clubs. A bit of character about him. You showed that quite early on. Always liked as well Martin O'Neill as well. He called him Cello, called him by a wee nickname. You can tell he obviously got a little soft spot for him as well when he obviously came on and decided the league. But that is the biggest thing as well, and it's such a reminder. I know with Rangers right now, their MO is going British in a different style, but Saracchi's a reminder that you can come from anywhere in the world. You just have to that personality to play for Celtic. It's such a a massive trait, and he has it. And you won't. He understands. He knows Kieran Tierney's not going anywhere. He won't play every game, but he's got such a versatility as well that you can imagine the Champions League as well. He's played in the Champions League. He knows the level. So you've got a guy at it's again after banging the table a bit Elijah just like less than 5 minutes ago. You're back in the same point. You're not going to get better than Marcelo Saracchi. He's an ideal side, and it's again. But Ryan made the point. Like he's obviously been in contact with people close to him. Like this might be one of these ones that if you don't, like, you can't wait forever. You've got to get him over. So I wouldn't be mucking about much longer. I think it's got to happen.
I think the final point for me and Saracchi would be you need. I think Celtic look at Celtic under Ange Postecoglou and look at the squad they had and players they could take off the bench and throw on to change the game. Aaron Moy, I'm thinking guys like that. Even Mattarella was on the bench at some point, which was crazy to think. But Marcelo Saracchi is a game changer. I know he's only a left back, but as I said, I mentioned that game against Hearts. If he doesn't come on, Celtic don't win the title. He'd really drove Celtic forward. So, yeah, I think you need as many guys like that as possible in the squad. And I'm pretty sure, I know for a fact that Martin O'Neill does want him. So it's just a case of, wait and see how that one progresses.
Just before I wrap up, guys, what's your movements then, Ryan, over the next 24 hours or so? The game's tomorrow night, but will you be catching up with Martin O'Neill or anyone else in the Celtic backroom team?
No, we did anticipate a presser tonight, but been informed that there's not going to be any press duties. So, there's nothing on the agenda tonight. Tomorrow, obviously, is the game at 6 o'clock at Shelbourne. So, hopefully, we'll get a chance to speak to Martin for the first time since he was appointed after the game. We certainly get to speak to a couple of players, but fingers crossed we'll get to speak to the manager and find out a wee bit more about what's happening in the transfer market.
I'm sure, Graeme, that Ryan will find something to do overnight in Dublin.
I know. I wonder. I think if he just goes 40 paces back the way, he might find a wee bit. But listen, I'll tell you what as well. You'll be going through that petty cash if you end up in there, won't you? It's not the cheapest, but but you'll.
That's what I was going to say. I'm not so sure that the reach expenses will cover a pint of Guinness.
Do you know? It's actually the biggest city in Europe now, Dublin, because it just keeps doubling and doubling.
Hey, on that note.
On that note, guys, I think that brings us to the end of this week's Record Celtic podcast.
A dire end.
Brought to you by Record Sport. Ryan, I hope it's a great trip for you and safe travels up the road when the time comes.
Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. Cheers, Dan. And Graeme.
It's always an absolute pleasure.
Take care, mate. Thanks, Dan.
And thank you very much to you watching at home. Stick with Record Sport for all of the latest Celtic news. Thanks for watching.